Welcome to Keto and Crime. Today I'm back with what happened yesterday, Tuesday, May 7th in the Chad Daybell trial. If you are watching this when it releases, you are watching it on Wednesday, May 8th. My name is Tracy. Welcome to Keto and Crime. I do true crime, dark history, horror movie reviews, and you'll find tons on this case on my channel. I have deep dived it many times, as well as an in-depth deep dive on one of the witnesses today, 𝗬𝗓𝗪. I will link all of that up there. And I have also reviewed and summarized Chad Daybell's books. So I've done way over 150 videos on this case. So it's all on my channel. And I did also follow day by day the 𝗚𝗏 trial and the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, where I tried to break down the day's testimony into as small a chunk as possible, hitting the high points. So that's what I do. I hope you enjoy it. I do a 𝗚𝗏, which is currently stuck on Cinco de Mayo. That will change soon. But for now, let's dive into what happened yesterday, Tuesday, May 7th, in the Chad Daybell case. So when court called into session, we are back with, first of all, with a meeting of the attorneys in the judge's chambers. That takes about 45 minutes. We will have to note that 𝗬𝗓𝗪's attorney, Garrett Smith, is in the courtroom, and she is going to be the first witness called. She is called by the prosecution just before 9 o'clock local time, and Lindsay Blake will question 𝗬𝗓𝗪. She asked 𝗬𝗓𝗪 how she met 𝗚𝗏. She said they met in 2018 at Melanie Gibbs' house. She said she met Chad at a conference in Mesa in the summer of 2018. She said she did not stay in contact with Chad, but she did stay in touch with Lori. She developed a friendship with Lori at the St. George conference in 2018, and she traveled with Lori, Melanie Gibb, Michelle, and another woman to that conference. She said that Lori was very flirtatious and giggly with Chad at that conference, obviously putting the moves on him, and we know about the romance novel. And that she did know she was currently married to Charles Vallow, and that she also knew Chad was married to Tammy. She said on the way home from the conference, they talked about certain scriptures. They searched certain scriptures, and they talked exclusively about the 144,000. She basically, Lori was spouting off about what Chad had told her, that they had been married several times in previous lives, and that in the most current one, the most previous life, Chad was James the Less, and who was one of Jesus Christ's disciples. So I guess he was the Apostle James, and Lori was his wife named Helena. Convenient. And she said that they were going to be angels who were supposed to gather the 144,000. Then they skipped forward to another conference that occurred a few months later in Arizona, and 𝗬𝗓𝗪 attended. She sat outside with Chad and Lori. Lori started playing basketball with Chad, and they were also kind of flirting with each other. 𝗬𝗓𝗪 said she felt very much like a third wheel and decided to go inside. And Chad suddenly said, "I'm going to go inside too." Lori said, "Why are you going inside? Are you scared of me?" That is also a weekend that Chad gave 𝗬𝗓𝗪 a blessing and basically told her she is a very special person with a huge job during the end times. Then the day after the conference, 𝗬𝗓𝗪 did not go to a meeting that was supposed to be held at Lori's house. She went to the temple. She said she walked into the celestial room, and Chad and Lori were sitting there. It shocked her. They both stood up and came over to her. She had no idea they were going to be there. I guess this is where they were trying to get sealed in the temple or pray about it. And then they switched to talking about what they talked about that day, which Chad clued 𝗬𝗓𝗪 in on his rating system. You know, the 6-point dark to 6-point light scale, and he explained all of that to her. He explains what happens when somebody goes dark, that you have a certain amount of time to get the demon out of them, or you have to kill the physical body. to free the actual soul from limbo, and that Chad told her that she, 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃, had lived in different worlds and that she was part of the heavenly inner circle. So a lot of information came out of a couple of conferences. 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃 said she had never heard anything like this before. And then after a quick sidebar, we're back with 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃, an exhibit of 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃's diary or journal that she kept in 2019. And through that, there were tons of entries about Chad's teachings, from translations, the metaphysical versus the terrestrial and celestial world, the vibration process, the spiritual dark scale, from light to dark. All of that was basically, 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃 took a lot of notes, and I will give that for her. And then once they go over that, they go to, she talks about a time that she went to lunch with Chad and 𝗠𝘂𝗀 at Firebirds. And that is when 𝗠𝘂𝗀 created a diagram kind of showing the light dark steps that we've all seen. And 𝗠𝘂𝗀, basically 𝗠𝘂𝗀 copied 𝗠𝘂𝗀's diagram into her journal. And then they talked about the billions of people that were dark, the few that were light, and then only about 1,200 people were 4.1 light, 7,000 4.2 light, 700 4.3, and only one person who is a 6 light and a 6 dark. I guess that's Jesus and the devil. And so basically, they show a receipt from Firebirds where 𝗠𝘂𝗀 drew Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ on it, who was in the Council of 12, the Council of 48, and all of their spots in it. Then Blake asked what Chad taught about exaltation. 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃 said that after you experience a probationary time, you become a righteous person who is spirit-minded. You become exalted and have a place in the celestial realm. 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃 said it is taught in her church that people can become exalted, but the way that Chad was teaching it was a lot different than mainline Mormon beliefs. And one thing about 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃, if you take a look at my deep dive on her, she's also kind of New Agey. So she's this weird mix of LDS and New Age. It's just weird. And basically Chad was telling her that she was exalted in another world and she was highly placed. And then they talk about the Council of 24. Again, working from her journal. And then they talk about how people become possessed, and this is the first time she'd ever heard that Charles was possessed by an evil spirit named Ned. I know it's Ned Schneider, but I can't help but think of Ned Flanders, from Simpsons. Hi, neighborino. Anyway. And then 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃 talks about a time that 𝗠𝘂𝗀 mentioned she and Charles were having some financial difficulties, but no other problems. And then they attempted, according to 𝗠𝘂𝗀𝗃, to cast evil spirits out of Charles, but that evidently failed. And then Blake asked her more about castings, and she said that she had briefly heard about it. I mean, everybody's heard of exorcisms, but she said that Ned, at one point they said Ned had been cast out, but then another dark spirit took over Charles' body named Garrett. Ironically, that is her attorney's name. And another casting with the same people failed to cast him out. And then she said that they checked everybody in everybody's families for whether they were dark and light. And then after they said they cast Garrett out, another dark demon named 𝗙𝗵𝗄𝗄 had also taken over Charles. So Charles just had a bad time with demons. And then this is about the time that she found out Charles had moved to Texas. They had pretty much separated. It's funny how when, Charles left, while he was still with 𝗠𝘂𝗀 providing for her, different demons came and went. But when he finally left, that's when the big one got him. And then she talked about how their teachings evolved over time based on the situation at hand. And that basically toward the end that she was told that Charles was pretty much, walking dead. And then Then they talk about how Charles lost his life. And then they skip to 𝗍𝗲𝗻 telling the group that Tammy was going to die early and that he had a portal in his house where he would get communication and instruction from the spirit world, and that he was expecting her death before her 50th birthday. He also pretty much kept telling them they were all part of the 144,000 and the part of the Church of the Firstborn. And then right after Charles was killed, she said that Chad and Alex started acting really, really buddy-buddy. Alex did highly believe in zombies and told 𝗍𝗲𝗻 if he ever turned into a zombie to shoot him in the face. And then that's when Lori moved to Rexburg with 𝗬𝗨, JJ, and Alex at the end of 2019. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 said, I asked Lori what she was going to do in Rexburg. She said she would live off, the almost $6,000 of Social Security benefits. And Lori told 𝗍𝗲𝗻 that if anything ever happened to Charles, he had $1 million policy, and Lori was the beneficiary. But of course, we know what happened with that. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 visited Rexburg in September of 2019. She stayed in Alex's apartment and visited Lori's. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 never saw 𝗬𝗨. Lori was telling her that 𝗬𝗨 had to be freed, and when 𝗍𝗲𝗻 asked for an explanation, Lori just put her hand against 𝗍𝗲𝗻's face and said, don't ask. Lori never provided any information on where 𝗬𝗨 was, but she did see JJ. Then 𝗍𝗲𝗻 recalled a time before they moved to Rexburg that Lori had told her that 𝗬𝗨 was going dark and had been possessed by a dark spirit named Hillary, and that Lori got all this information from Chad, and that she also told 𝗍𝗲𝗻 that JJ was under attack from evil spirits at night. They couldn't get to him because all the evil spirits were being absorbed into JJ's service dog. Then Lori got rid of the service dog, and I said the only reason that dog wasn't sold or killed was because the service agency came and took him back. And then after Melanie Gibb visited Rexburg, she and 𝗍𝗲𝗻 had a visit, and Gibb said that she learned during her trip to Rexburg that JJ had become a zombie, I guess because they got rid of the dog. The last protection was taken away. She said that Chad and Lori were very romantic with each other, Melanie told her, and that basically Rexburg is the last bastion of heaven during the end times. Again, convenient. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 said she was not dating Alex right at the time they moved to Rexburg, but she had pretty much adamantly told them she was not moving to Rexburg. I guess they were trying to move the whole crew there. And but basically she did stay in close contact with them, and were forgiven. Then there's about a 30-minute break, and then 𝗍𝗲𝗻 talks about how she expressed her concern for the children to Lori and all the language surrounding the children. She was really concerned that JJ and 𝗬𝗨 were deemed zombies, where all of Jad's children were rated as light. And then the next page in her diary, she's flipping through her diary. We're told the story of James and Elena, the creepy romance novel. I'll link it up above. And then several names are listed there, including JJ, Melanie Palawowski, James, Elena, and different ratings from light to dark on everybody. And that then came to Tammy, who was now dark because an evil demon named Viola had entered her, and that 𝗍𝗲𝗻 participated in a casting on Tammy on October 9th, same day that somebody fired a gun at her. And then 𝗍𝗲𝗻 said she learned much later on about that shooting, and it seemed that very strange. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 says Lori was calling the person on the phone a moron, idiot, and stupid. So probably mad that attempt failed. And then 𝗍𝗲𝗻 said that by this time her and Alex were starting to date. 𝗍𝗲𝗻 spoke to Alex about a new car. They did not discuss the casting, and then she learned a few days later about Tammy's death for Melanie Gibb, and that's what happened, that the demon took her body because the casting did not work. And then she officially began dating Alex on October 31st, 2019. They got engaged at Alex's apartment in November 7th. He gave 𝗬𝗪 a size 5 diamond ring. And this is when Lori and Chad were in Hawaii. And then on the way back from Hawaii, she said Chad and Lori had a layover in Gilbert. They were staying at a hotel and asked 𝗬𝗪 to pick them up and take them back to the airport. 𝗬𝗪 said she picked them up, asked them where JJ was. Lori said she had given JJ to 𝗂𝗏𝗁𝗁. Chad and Lori were acting like newlyweds. They couldn't keep their hands from each other, and they appeared really happily and giggly. And then Chad pulled a pendulum out of his back pocket and asked 𝗬𝗪 a question and said we could ask, and 𝗬𝗪 said no thank you. It was a rating system. Chad was wanting to tell 𝗬𝗪 whether she was light or dark. She said no thank you. And then she talked to them about some more spiritual things. Alex went to spend Thanksgiving at 𝗬𝗪's house in Arizona. He told her that he had seen Chad and Lori before he went to Arizona, but they stopped returning his calls and texts. Alex was very upset. He felt like they were pulling away from him. And then he says, can you believe they were being such jerks after I helped them? They don't even want to talk to me now. So they're pulling back from their hitman. And 𝗬𝗪 said, help them with what? And he said, with everything. And 𝗬𝗪 said, I didn't ask anything else. He didn't offer anything else, but she got the feeling what he was referring to. And then she learned that both the children were missing. There was a huge check for the children, a huge investigation. The Woodcocks had called in a welfare check. And then after, and Alex was pretty much not the same person from this Thanksgiving on till his death on December 12th, 2019. The Saturday before Alex died, 𝗬𝗪 said that Alex told her he was going to Mexico for the day. He left in the morning, but came back sick that night. And then, of course, we know what happened. The night before Alex died, Chad and Lori called them to say that Tammy's body was getting exhumed. It seemed strange to 𝗬𝗪, but she did ask Alex, if they exhume her body and do an autopsy, are you going to be tied to anything that happened to Tammy? And Alex said no. But he was quite somber and depressed after that final conversation with Chad and Lori. Alex basically said he's going to be their fall guy, and I think I'm going to be their fall guy, and either I'm a man of God or I'm not, but never really elaborated on it. And then we know that Alex, of course, died of potentially, supposedly, blood clots in his lungs. And then Pryor will cross-examine. He began asking 𝗬𝗪 more about the doctrine. She goes over the Council of 48, the Council of 24, the 7 gatherers, castings, pretty much everything that I've talked about in my deep dive on 𝗬𝗪. Again, it's linked up there. Check that out. But we've basically more and more about the doctrine, and was it coming from Chad or was it coming from Lori? Then she's also talked a little bit about the near-death experiences that Chad believed he had, and about how the whole demonology kind of thing worked. Then they play a excerpt from one of 𝗬𝗪's interviews with police. I've also reacted to that. It's on my channel. I'll also link it up here. And they play the entire 3-hour interview, and they stop kind of getting her to elaborate on a lot of the things that she said. But basically, it's a lot about the doctrine, who said what, who went where, and basically leading up to Alex's death. Then they go over a few emails where they're talking about 𝗬𝗪 saying that she's had visions that demons are attacking Lori, and Lori saying she'll be all right. Then they talk about all of the law enforcement agents being deemed dark. And then they talk about her engagement and wedding to Alex, right, you know, and all the events leading up to his death, and how, and then Pryor pretty much again says, are you aware that my client is not implicated in either the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux, or the murder of Charles Vallow. And Salima says, yes, I'm aware of that. And then he goes, who is implicated in that? And she said Alex was. So again, he's trying to deflect. With all this information that's obviously coming from Chad, he's still trying to deflect. And again, they go more into light and dark, more of the doctrine, and then Pryor says he has nothing further. Blake then redirects, pretty much honing in that whereas Pryor was trying to take it in a direction of Lori was saying all of this to 𝗪𝗡, Blake takes it back and says that even if it was coming from Lori, the source of it was Chad. So Pryor, still trying to do his deflection. And so they pretty much finish up on more testimony involving Tammy being dark, JJ being dark, Tylee being dark, and then their imminent deaths. And then she is released. The next witness called by the prosecution is Dr. Garth Warren. He's a forensic pathologist for the Ada County Coroner's Office. He's been in practice for 7 years in Idaho and 5 years in Colorado. He's investigated a wide variety of deaths, non-natural deaths, so anything that is not by illness or obvious accident. He is he helps investigate that. And so they're talking about the pathology of the death surrounding J.J. Vallow, and based on what the remains, they were able to ascertain that it looked as though JJ's cause of death was asphyxia by a plastic bag over the head and duct tape covering the mouth. Warren says the first time he saw the remains of JJ, he was in a black body bag. He broke the seal of the body bag. He was wrapped in a black tarp with multiple strips of duct tape. So they pretty much unburied him, took pictures, put him in the body bag, and sent him to the coroner's office. And this was the first time he said he got a good look at JJ. He said it was very obvious to him that he was dead from homicide. And basically, he said that he was covered with duct tape. He was in red pajamas. His body was in a state of decomposition. There wasn't a whole lot left. That they were able to take samples from the hand, the nails, oral, anal, and penile swabs to see if there had been any strange toxicology going on. And then they checked what was left of his organs. He said that there was a small hemorrhage underneath JJ's right thumbnail, and that meant there had been force or trauma applied to that finger, probably in a struggle while they were holding a plastic bag around the child's head. There was bruising on JJ's ankles, and he said that it also looks like there had been a struggle, that most of the bruising looked like it had happened pre-mortem rather than post-mortem. And he said that they did do a basic Y incision, looked at his brain, heart, lungs, liver. All of JJ's organs were intact, but they had begun to decompose. So they looked at a lot of the tissue under the microscope. There were no bone, chips, fractures, or breaks, and that there were no signs of any natural disease or toxicology, fluids. He said that they did test for the blood, urine, and vitreous fluid, including penile secretions, and they were unable to get any notable toxicology that would say that he was drugged. GHB is a depressant that was found in the liver, but he said it was probably produced post-mortem, as none of the medications or any of the levels were high enough to say that he had been drugged. He also did Tylee's autopsy, which was different because she was pretty much in pieces and partially burnt, and that they were able to test as much of her tissue as possible. But even though they specifically couldn't specify an actual cause of death for her, they labeled it asphyxiation because it was obvious that she had been, from the bruising and the stuff that they were able to see, the condition of the tissue, that she had obviously been held down and asphyxiated the same way as JJ. And then he said he did review her medical records. She had a history of anxiety and panic attacks, and a history of ovarian cysts, and a history of pancreatitis. but Wood did ask him if any of those things were problematic to explain her death, and he says no, all of those conditions are very treatable and would not have caused death. And then they break for the day. I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday the 9th, with what happened today, Wednesday, May the 8th, in the Chad Daybell trial. And until next time, 𝗙𝗶𝗀𝗀𝗀.